Well, first of all, thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We're going to do a little presentation here to look at the new features that are in our BEEST version 12.10, which was just released a couple of weeks ago. So, starting off, well, I guess I ought to introduce myself first. My name is James Redd, and I am with Providence Engineering and Environmental. I'm based out of Round Rock, Texas. And so, getting back to the presentation here, first off, BEEST 12.10 includes the new AirMod and AirMet executables versions 23132. So we'll talk about changes with AirMet 23132 as well as AirMod 23132, and then talk about some of the other enhancements that we've added to BEEST since our last update. So in AirMet version 23132, the big thing there is that it now includes something called the Coupled Ocean Atmosphere Response Experiment, or CORE. And this allows AirMet to be applied in any cases where you have to worry about offshore or overwater boundary layer conditions. And you'll be able to use this algorithm with either direct overwater observations or via prognostic meteorology, such as the Mesoscale Model Interface, or MMIF. Now, originally, historically, there was an alternative model formulation called AirCore, and this was proposed by several applicants and then approved by EPA's model clearinghouse. And it's one of those cases where, well, if you see it approved enough times, you have a suspicion that it's going to become part of the regulatory framework, and in this case, it did. So AirMet, including the core algorithms, supersedes the old AirCore. And as part of EPA's rulemaking, they're proposing that to have a regulatory status. But for now, if you run AirMod using the AirMet core meteorology, when you run AirMod, you have to invoke the beta keyword, because at this moment, technically, it's a beta option. Hopefully, a year from now, we'll be calling it a regulatory option. Our AirMet user interface that's a part of BEEST does run AirMet version 23132. Now, one of the things that's an enhancement that was going to be in the GUI anyway is that we've added a list of ASOS station anemometer heights. Pardon me. And so if you're in AirMet and click the help drop down, one of the options is anemometer heights. We've also added a prompt to confirm when you're removing the last day of metadata output, or AirMet output files, to make sure that you're not inadvertently deleting more than the last day of the file. And you can see down here, there's a little screenshot snippet of what that looks like. So it says, do you want to remove the last day of your output files? That last day happened to be January the 1st, and that's always the day you want to remove. If you had removed it and came back and for whatever reason tried to remove it again, it would say, oh, do you want to remove the last day? And now it would say Friday, December 31st, 2021, which should be a big indicator that, oh, no, I don't want to do that. Thanks for the reminder. The new keywords that are a part of the AirMet program itself are not in this release of AirMet of the GUI. They're going to come out in a future version of BEEST, maybe 12.11 or something like that. So another thing that's new this time with respect to AirMod is that the EPA has a rule proposal to update the guideline air quality models, aka Appendix W. And this proposal proposes to add something called the General Reaction Set Method, or GRSM, as a new Tier 3 detailed screening technique for modeling NO2. Currently, GRSM is a beta option in AirMod, and if this proposal is finalized, approved by EPA, it would put GRSM at the same level as the ozone limiting method or the plume volume molar ratio method, PVMRM. Now, like OLM and PVMRM, GRSM uses ambient ozone data to estimate the conversion of NO to NO2, but unlike those two, it uses hourly observations of NOx to estimate the photolysis of NO2 to NO plus the odd oxygen atom. So in the actual NO2 chemistry in the atmosphere, not only is NO converted to NO2, but NO2 is split into NO via photolysis using ultraviolet radiation. So if you look in BEEST in the control options screen and go to the Air NO2 tab, you'll see that we have the GRSM radio button down here, and then you have to put in the NO2 to NOx ratio for it. And then down below is where you tell it to find and populate the background ozone data, as well as the background NOx data. And I don't believe that I mentioned it here, but if you were to go into our AirMod Wizard software and look up the ambient monitoring data, one of the drop downs available to you there is total NOx. So you have a way to get that total NOx data for invoking GRSM. So again, BEAST does run AirMod version 23132. And this version also includes some alpha options. And just to refresh your memory, alpha options are those that somebody in the technical or research community has come up with and says, hey, I think at some point in time down the road, this would be a good thing to have in AirMod. And so these are sort of research and testing options. You can't use them for regulatory purposes, permit modeling, and you can't even take them through the model clearinghouse as an alternative model demonstration. So it's sort of the alpha is the first step on what could end up as a regulatory option, but at this point, they're just new approaches. So the alpha options here include something called R-Line XT, which is an extension of the R-Line line source algorithm, something called SW point for sidewash point sources. We've included information related to offshore platform downwash, the platform keyword, and then R-Line FDH, which has or refers to wind profile calculations for both the R-Line and the R-Line XT sources without any displacement height. So that's sort of the skinny on changes in AirMod. In terms of changes that or enhancements we've made to BEAST, one of the things that we've had, and it's actually pretty straightforward, and I'm surprised we hadn't thought about it before now, but now we have the ability to drop receptors along a line. So if you remember the way to add volume sources along a line for a road, for example, this is the same thing where you draw an other line and then come back and tell BEAST to put receptors in there. And I'll do a little demo here when we get through this. Also in BEAST, it has the ability to read ArcGIS world files when you open a background map, so that it doesn't prompt you for the southwest and northeast corner coordinates. And we've also added a warning when the number of partitions for your run, whether it's local or Beast Express. But when that number is greater than the total number of receptors that you have. So again, Beast, we have the new R-Line XT and side wash point sources. If you look on the left-hand side of show current data graphically, you have these two new options here for R-Line XT on the left and side wash point on the right. And if you go to grid view, we have the R-Line XT tab and the SW point tab up at the top of that as well. So let me pop out here and open my one more. So this is the test case that comes with BEEST. You've probably seen it 100 times. Over here on the left-hand side, here is add an R-Line XT source and add a side wash point source. I wanted to show you how you can put in a line of receptors. So as an example here, maybe you happen to have a road or some other piece of ambient air that crosses your property here. If you go to add other on the left-hand side, second row from the bottom, far right, and draw in your line. Let's call it line Rex. And now come to the anchor point. Oops. And when you right click, you now have an option to create line of receptors. And you can put a fixed distance between them, which you probably want to do, or you can say, I have a total number of receptors I want to put in, and BEEST, you figure out what the distance between them should be. I'm going to go with the first option and say I want them spaced every 25 meters. And then say, do you want them to start at the beginning of the line or offset it a half of the spacing distance? I'm just going to say start at the beginning and then say OK. And now I have a line of receptors along this line, which could be a road or some other piece of ambient air. So that's that one here. Let me open up AirMet real quick and show you. Should have shown this earlier. This is the link to all the anemometer heights for the ASOS data. So again, if you go to help, it's one of the options underneath that drop down. Okay. Here's an example of BEEST checking for partitions versus receptors. And in this example, we only had 20 receptors, but we told AirMod to partition at 25 partitions. And BEEST just comes up and says, hey, you can't do this because your number of partitions is more than the number of receptors. I don't think this is going to come up very often, but it is in there now. USF Viewer displays output summary files for the new version of AirMod. And so here is the USF Viewer. And this is actually, I just, before this presentation started, I reran the test case and opened it here. And sure enough, it says this is version 23132, as well as the version of AirMed. In this case, it was an older version. And that actually is it. Are there any questions?
James, this is Friend with CK.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Will version 22112 be available in the latest BEEST, or is there any need to keep the previous version just in case you need to rerun, something that was done like maybe about 2-3 months ago? Or
Yeah,
you understand
that's
what
a
I'm
really
asking?
good question. So that older version will not be in Beast, but we keep older versions of the older versions of the older executables, and you can just send us an email, we'll send it to you, and all you'll have to do is go into here. I'll show you.
Well, do you know if there is any need to do that? Is the new version of AirMod so different that you'll get different results? Do you know that?
I,
I mean,
I would be surprised if you get different results. If you would, it would be very minimal, I would think, because they really haven't touched any of the other algorithms model.
okay.
But sometimes you may have started a project with an older version of Beast and the older version of AirMod, and the agency may come back, the permitting agency come back and go, oh, you need to fix this. And if you've already downloaded and installed the new version of Beast, which includes the new AirMod, then you'd have to shoot us an email and say, hey, can I get the executable for version 22112, for example?
And you have
And
to
that's not
install
a problem at all.
and you have to install that somewhere else.
Yeah, what I was going to say is if you go to File and Preferences Model Selection,
Ah, okay.
so you can take that older version and put it anywhere you want on your computer.
Mhm.
It's going to have the same name as the current one, which is airmod.exe. But if you just put in a different folder and tell Beast to point to that old one, you should be able to work it just fine.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you.
Hey,
You
James, I was
bet.
gonna throw out one thing. If you need to link Beast to an older version of AirMod, just like James said, we have copies of the older AirMod executables if you need them. But Beast, the current version of Beast should be compatible with any version of AirMod back through 19191. I think before that, you'd have to reinstall an older version of Beast, but through 19191, it'll work with just using this method through preferences.
What in the issue related to the AirMet though, because AirMet was changed from 3 stages to 2 stages, right? Not too long ago.
You're right. I think AirMet
Right.
is not going to be as compatible for if you have to go a couple versions back. But AirMod should be good through 19191. AirMet, you might need to reinstall to get a different version.
So the two have to match in terms of version.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
At one point in time, EPA had put some kind of a check in AirMod so that if you tried to run, and I'm just pulling these version numbers out of the air. If you tried to run AirMod version of 22112 and you had MET data that was processed with AirMet 12345,
Mhm.
that you would get a warning that says, oh, this is not the correct version. Because apparently back then it checked for version compatibility, version number compatibility. But I don't know that that's going to be the issue with the new version of AirMet.
Okay.
Any other questions? Well, if not, thank you very much. If you think of something after we sign off here, feel free to shoot me an email or call. I believe we have recorded this and we'll be posting it to our um, website and/or our YouTube channel. I hope I
Thank you,
said that right.
James.
Well, I guess if there's no other questions, thank you very much for joining us, and happy holidays.
Thank you. You too, James.